The rain wasn't just falling. It was attacking. It drummed against the hood of the rusted-out 1998 Ford F-150 like 1,000 tiny hammers, and I was stuck right in the middle of it. My name is Elias Vance. Or, at least, that's what I thought my name was. I was lying on my back, in a 6-inch deep puddle of oily slush, trying to reach a stripped bolt on a Mercedes SUV that had broken down on the side of the interstate. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, though I was freezing, but from the hunger. I hadn't eaten anything but a sleeve of saltine crackers in 2 days. "Hey, grease monkey, you almost done? We have a dinner reservation at 8, and I'm not paying you to take a nap under my car." That voice. I froze. I knew that voice. I'd spent 4 years listening to that voice in my own living room. I slid out from under the chassis, the muddy water soaking through my thin jumpsuit, and looked up. Standing there, under a designer umbrella, was Marcus Thorne, my former best friend, the man who had convinced me to sign over my patents for a temporary merger before firing me, blacklisting me from the industry, and taking my wife. And standing right next to him, wearing a mink coat that probably cost more than my entire life, was Sarah. She looked at me, and her nose crinkled in pure, unadulterated disgust. "Elias?" she whispered, her voice dripping with pity. "Is that really you? Oh, my God, Marcus, look at him. He literally smells like a sewer." Marcus laughed. It was a loud, booming sound that made my chest tighten. He reached into his leather wallet and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. He didn't hand it to me. He dropped it right into the mud. "Keep the change, buddy," Marcus sneered. "I guess some people are born to design the engines, and some people are just born to fix them when they break. Try not to spend it all on cheap gin." They got into the car. The engine roared to life, the very engine I had designed in my garage 5 years ago, and they sped off, splashing a wall of freezing water directly into my face. I sat there, on the side of the road, for a long time. I reached down and picked up the $100 bill. It was covered in grime. Just like me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an old flip phone with a cracked screen. I figured it was another debt collector. "Hello?" I rasped. "Is this Elias Vance?" The voice on the other end was clipped, professional. It sounded like money. "Who's asking?" "My name is Arthur Sterling. I'm the lead counsel for the Hayes estate. We've been searching for you for 22 years, Mr. Vance. Or should I say, Mr. Hayes." I leaned against the guardrail, my head spinning. "I think you have the wrong guy. My dad was a janitor in Queens. He died 10 years ago." "The man who raised you was a kidnapper, Elias," the lawyer said, his voice softening just a fraction. "He was a former security guard who took you from the Hayes mansion in Connecticut when you were 3 years old. We just got the hit from the ancestry database you submitted to last month. The DNA. It's a perfect match." I didn't speak. I couldn't. "Elias, your biological father was Silas Hayes, the founder of Hayes International. He passed away last Christmas, and he left everything to his only living heir. The accounts, the real estate, the private fleet, it's all yours. The current valuation of the liquid assets alone is $3 billion. I looked at the mud on my hands. $3 billion. "There's one more thing," Arthur continued. "One of our subsidiaries recently acquired a struggling automotive firm called Thorne Tech. It seems the CEO, a man named Marcus Thorne, has been creative with his accounting. We were going to liquidate them tomorrow, unless you had other plans." A slow, cold smile spread across my face. The rain didn't feel so cold anymore. "Arthur," I said, my voice as hard as granite. "Yes, Mr. Hayes?" "Don't liquidate them yet. I want to meet them first. I want to meet them at their annual gala tonight." The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was blinded by gold and crystal. Everyone who was anyone in the tech world was there. Marcus and Sarah were center stage, sipping champagne, laughing as they told the story of the pathetic mechanic they'd seen on the side of the road earlier that day. "He was literally shivering," Marcus told a group of investors, clutching his glass. "I almost felt bad for him. Almost." Suddenly, The heavy oak doors at the back of the room swung open. The room went dead silent. I walked in. I wasn't wearing a greasy jumpsuit anymore. I was wearing a bespoke midnight black tuxedo. My hair was slicked back. My skin was clean. I looked like a ghost from a past they thought they had buried. Sarah dropped her glass. It shattered against the marble floor. "Elias?" Marcus stepped forward, his face turning a bright, angry red. "How the hell did you get in here? Security! Get this bum out of my sight!" Two massive security guards started toward me, but Arthur Sterling stepped out from behind me, holding a leather briefcase. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Arthur said calmly. The guards stopped. They knew who Arthur was. Everyone did. I walked right up to Marcus. I could smell the expensive cologne on his neck. I could see the sweat starting to bead on his forehead. "Nice party, Marcus," I said, my voice echoing in the silence. "But I think there's been a little restructuring." "What are you talking about?" Marcus hissed. "This is my company. I built this." "Actually," I said, leaning in close so only he could hear. "You stole this, and today, I bought it back, along with your house, your cars, and that watch on your wrist." I turned to the crowd, raising my voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Elias Hayes, and as of 5 minutes ago, I am the new chairman of Hayes International, which means I am now the owner of Thorn Tech." The room erupted in whispers. Sarah was shaking. She reached out to touch my arm, her eyes wide with a desperate, fake affection. "Elias, honey, I didn't know," she stammered. "Marcus, he forced me to leave you. He threatened me. I've always loved you." I looked at her hand on my sleeve. Then I looked her dead in the eye. "You didn't love me when I was fixing that Mercedes in the rain, Sarah," I said, my voice like ice. "You didn't love me when you splashed mud in my face. You loved the money. But the problem is, none of it belongs to you anymore." I looked at Marcus. He looked like he was about to have a heart attack. "Marcus," I said, "you have 1 hour to clear out your desk. After that, I'm having you arrested for the patent fraud you committed 4 years ago. Arthur has the files. The DA is waiting in the lobby." Marcus fell to his knees. "Elias, please, we were brothers." "Brothers don't let brothers starve in the rain," I said. I turned to the waiter standing nearby. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the muddy, crumpled $100 bill Marcus had thrown at me earlier. "Keep the change," I told the waiter, dropping the bill onto Marcus's shoulder. I walked out of that ballroom without looking back. The rain was still falling outside. But for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the umbrella. And the view from the top, it was perfect. The view from the 34th floor of the Hayes International building was breathtaking. The city looked like a collection of glowing circuit boards, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't just a component being soldered into place. I was the architect. I sat in the leather chair that used to belong to my biological father. It smelled like expensive tobacco and power. There was a soft chime on my desk. It was my new assistant, Clara. "Mr. Hayes, there is a woman in the lobby. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's making quite a scene. She claims to be your wife." I leaned back, a cold knot forming in my stomach. "Send her up, Clara, but have security standing right outside the door." 5 minutes later, the mahogany doors burst open. Sarah stepped in. She had traded her mink coat for a conservative silk dress, trying to look like the supportive wife she never was. Her eyes were red and puffy. She looked desperate. "Elias? Oh, thank God," she sobbed, rushing toward my desk. "The police. They took Marcus away in handcuffs. It was horrible. They're freezing all the accounts. I don't even have a place to stay tonight." I didn't move. I didn't even blink. "And why, exactly, is that my problem, Sarah?" She stopped in her tracks, her lower lip trembling. "How can you say that? We were married for 3 years. We had a life together. I only went with Marcus because he told me that you were dangerous. He manipulated me, Elias. I was a victim too. I stood up slowly, leaning my hands on the desk. A victim? Sarah, I watched you laugh as he threw a $100 bill into the mud. I watched you look at me like I was a piece of trash stuck to the bottom of your shoe. You didn't seem very manipulated then. I was acting, she shrieked. I had to. He would have ruined me. He did ruin you, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Because you chose him, and now you get to share his fate. I've already filed the paperwork to have our divorce settlement revisited based on the fraud you committed with Marcus to hide my assets. Her face went pale. The grieving wife act vanished in a heartbeat. You can't do that. I'll sue you for everything you're worth. With what money? I asked. The bank accounts are seized. The house is in my name now, and the car you drove here, it's being towed as we speak. I pressed the intercom. Security, please escort this stranger out of the building, and if she sets foot on the property again, have her arrested for trespassing. As the guards dragged a screaming Sarah out of my office, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a strange sense of emptiness. I needed to see someone who didn't know about the $3 billion. I grabbed my jacket and headed down to the garage. I didn't take the armored limousine. I took a standard, unassuming black sedan and drove to the outskirts of the city to a small, grease-stained diner called Ma's Kitchen. I walked in. The bell above the door jingled. The place smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease. A young woman with a messy ponytail and a flour-stained apron was scrubbing a counter. She looked up and smiled, a real, genuine smile. Elias, she chirped, where have you been? I haven't seen you in 3 days. I was worried you finally got tired of my terrible coffee. This was Maya. When I was living in my truck, she used to forget to charge me for my breakfast. She'd slip extra sandwiches into my bag and tell me they were leftovers that were going to be thrown away. She didn't know I was a Hayes. To her, I was just the guy who fixed the diner's leaky sink for free. Hey, Maya, I said, sliding onto a stool. I've had a busy few days. She looked at my clothes. I was still wearing a $5,000 suit, though I'd taken off the tie. Whoa, she said, leaning on the counter. Look at you. Did you finally get that job at the high-end shop? You look like $1 million. Something like that, I said, my voice softening. Well, good for you, Elias. Seriously, you're a good man. You deserved a break. She reached under the counter and pulled out a slice of apple pie. On the house, to celebrate your new job. I looked at the pie. Then I looked at her. She had a smudge of flour on her nose, and she was genuinely happy for me, with absolutely nothing to gain. Maya, I said. Yeah? How would you feel about owning this place? And maybe 10 others just like it. She laughed, thinking I was joking. Yeah, right. And maybe I'll marry a prince and move into a castle, too. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card, a heavy, gold-embossed card that read, Elias Hayes, Chairman. I'm not a prince, Maya, I said, sliding the card across the counter. But I do own a very large company, and I'm looking for someone I can trust to run a new charitable foundation for struggling small businesses. Maya looked at the card. Then she looked at the black sedan parked outside. Then she looked back at me, her mouth hanging open. Elias? She whispered. What is this? This, I said, finally feeling a real smile touch my face, is the part where the good guys finally win. The air in the boardroom was thick enough to choke a horse. I sat at the head of the table, looking out at 12 men and women in suits that cost more than my first 3 houses combined. They didn't see a CEO. They didn't see the heir to the Hayes empire. They saw a mechanic. They saw grease under my fingernails that no amount of expensive soap could ever truly wash away, and they were circling me, like sharks that had caught a scent of blood in the water. Mr. Hayes, one of them started. A man named Sterling Vance. No relation to my old name, but just as slimy. He was the senior vice president of operations, and he'd been with my biological father for 30 years. We understand the emotional gravity of your situation, but the board has concerns. Serious concerns. Our stock price dipped 2 points when the news broke that the new chairman spent the last decade sleeping in a Ford F-150. I didn't snap. I didn't yell. I just leaned forward, placing my hands flat on the glass table. 2 points, Sterling? I asked softly. That's funny. Because according to the morning reports, the market cap actually rose by 400 million when people realized the new owner actually knows how to build the products this company sells, instead of just looking at spreadsheets in a climate-controlled office. The room went quiet. I've spent the last 10 years under the hoods of cars that cost more than your annual bonus, I continued, my voice gaining an edge. I know why the Thorn Tech engines are failing. I know why our competitors are beating us to the punch. It's because this board is focused on margins, while the rest of the world is focused on machines. Before Sterling could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a private line. Only one person had it. Excuse me, I said, standing up. I have to take this. It's from the Department of Corrections. The look on Sterling's face was priceless. I stepped into my private office and hit the button. What do you want, Marcus? There was a long pause, filled with the static of a recorded prison line. Then, that familiar, arrogant voice crawled through the speaker. You think you've won, don't you, Elias? Marcus sounded different, faster, more desperate. You think you can just walk into that building and play king? I talked to my lawyer today, my real lawyer, not the public defender they gave me. I'm sure he's very expensive, Marcus. Too bad you don't have a bank account to pay him with. Oh, I have something better than money, Elias, Marcus hissed. I have the truth about your father, the man who kidnapped you, the janitor. My grip tightened on the phone. Leave his name out of your mouth. He didn't just take you, Elias, he was paid to take you. By someone inside Hayes International, someone who's still there, someone who's sitting in that boardroom with you right now, and if you don't get these charges dropped, if you don't give me $10 million and a flight to a non-extradition country, I'm going to release the documents. I'll prove you aren't the heir. I'll prove the DNA test was faked. You're lying, I said, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. Am I? Ask Sterling Vance about the security audit of 1994. Ask him why your biological mother accidentally fell down those stairs 2 months after you disappeared. You're playing a game you don't understand, grease monkey. You're in a room full of monsters, and you're the only one without teeth. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time, looking at my reflection in the window. Was it possible? Was my entire life, the poverty, the struggle, the kidnapping, all just a corporate maneuver? I walked back into the boardroom. They were whispering. As soon as I entered, they stopped. Sterling Vance gave me a thin, oily smile. Everything all right, Mr. Hayes? I looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw the way he adjusted his cufflinks, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes. Everything is fine, Sterling, I said, sitting back down. In fact, it's better than fine. I've just decided to conduct a full forensic audit of the company, starting with the records from the year 1994. The color drained from Sterling's face so fast I thought he was going to faint. But I wasn't done. And since we're talking about transparency, I'd like to introduce our new head of corporate social responsibility. I signaled to Clara. The doors opened, and Maya walked in. She looked incredible. She was wearing a simple, professional navy blue suit. She looked nervous, but her eyes were bright and steady. She was the only thing in this room that wasn't covered in a layer of fake gold. This is Maya Reed, I told the board. She'll be overseeing the distribution of the Hayes Foundation grants. Specifically, the ones that will be helping the families of the employees Marcus Thorne cheated over the last 5 years. Maya nodded to the room. It's a pleasure to meet you all, she said, her voice clear and honest. Sterling scoffed. A waitress? You're bringing a waitress into a multi-billion-dollar boardroom. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a dangerous level. "She's not a waitress, Sterling. She's the person who fed me when I was starving. She's the person who taught me that a man's worth isn't measured by his bank account, but by his word. Something you, and Marcus, and Sarah, clearly never learned." I stood up. "Meeting adjourned. Sterling, I want those files on my desk by 5 p.m. If they're missing, I'm calling the FBI." As I walked Maya out of the room, I could feel the heat of their stares on my back. I knew I had just declared war, not just on Marcus, but on the very empire I had inherited. We got into the elevator. Maya let out a long, shaky breath. "Elias, are you sure about this? Those people, they looked like they wanted to kill you." "They do," I said, looking at the floor numbers ticking down. "But they've forgotten one thing, Maya." "What's that?" "They think I'm a billionaire, playing at being a mechanic. But the truth is, I'm a mechanic who just happens to have $3 billion, and I know exactly how to take a broken machine and strip it down for parts." We reached the lobby, but as the doors opened, a woman was standing there. It was Sarah, but she didn't look like the polished socialite from the gala. Her hair was a mess. Her expensive dress was wrinkled. She looked deranged. "Elias!" she screamed, lunging toward us. Security stepped in immediately, catching her arms. "You think you can just cast me aside? I know what Marcus told you. I have the files. I have the proof." I stopped. "Proof of what, Sarah?" She laughed, a high-pitched, jagged sound. "The DNA test. It wasn't faked, you idiot. But your father, your real father, he didn't die of old age. Sterling Vance poisoned him, and I have the medical records to prove it. Marcus was holding them for blackmail, but I stole them from his safe before the police arrived." She held up a small silver flash drive. "You want this, Elias? You want justice for your father?" Sarah's eyes were wild with greed. "Give me $50 million, right now, or I'll drop this into the sewer and you'll never prove a thing." I looked at the flash drive. I looked at Maya, who was watching me with a mixture of horror and pity. Then I looked at Sarah, the woman I had once loved, the woman who was now trying to sell me the truth about my father's murder. I didn't reach for my checkbook. "You know, Sarah," I said, my voice calm, "when I was a mechanic, I learned that you can't fix a core that's completely rusted out. You just have to throw the whole engine away." I nodded to the security guards. "Take her to the police," I said. "Tell them she's in possession of stolen evidence related to a homicide investigation. If she hands over the drive, maybe she'll get a shorter sentence. If she doesn't, well, I've got enough money to make sure she never sees the sun again." "Elias, no!" Sarah screamed as they dragged her away. "You can't do this. I'm your wife. Elias!" I watched her go. I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I turned to Maya. "Hungry?" I asked. She blinked, surprised by the change in my tone. "After all, you're thinking about food?" "I'm thinking about a grilled cheese at Ma's kitchen," I said. "And I'm thinking about how we're going to spend the next 10 years, making sure nobody ever has to go through what I did." Maya smiled. She took my hand. Her palm was warm. "Real. I think I'd like that, Elias," she said, as we walked out into the sunlight. For the first time, the past didn't feel like a weight. It felt like a foundation, and I was finally ready to build something that would last. The air in the back of the police cruiser was cold, but not as cold as the feeling in my chest. I was sitting outside the Sterling Vance estate in Connecticut. The mansion was a sprawling, ugly monument to greed. It was built on the blood of my father and the stolen years of my childhood. In my hand, I held the silver flash drive Sarah had tried to use to blackmail me. My tech team had cracked the encryption in less than 20 minutes. It wasn't just medical records. It was everything. There were recorded phone calls from 1994. There were wire transfer receipts to the man I grew up calling Dad. There was even a video. A grainy security cam clip from the night Silas Hayes died. It showed Sterling Vance, the man my father trusted most, switching out a heart medication bottle for something else. "Are you ready, Mr. Hayes?" Detective Miller asked. looking at me through the rear-view mirror. "I've been ready for 22 years, Detective," I said. "Let's finish this." We stepped out of the car. The blue and red lights were turned off. We wanted the element of surprise. We walked up to the massive oak doors, and I didn't knock. I used the master key the board of directors had given me after I took over the company. The door swung open to a marble foyer that felt like a tomb. Sterling Vance was standing by the fireplace, a glass of 30-year-old scotch in his hand. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired. "I figured you'd be coming tonight, Elias," Sterling said, not even turning around. "You have your father's eyes, but you have that stubbornness from the man who raised you in Queens. It's a volatile mix." "You killed him," I said. My voice was steady, like a surgeon's hand. "You killed a man who considered you a brother, just so you could sit in a bigger chair." Sterling turned around, a faint, twisted smile on his face. "I didn't just kill him, Elias. I erased him, and I would have erased you too, if that idiot security guard hadn't grown a conscience and decided to hide you instead of finishing the job. I paid him to put you in the ground, not to raise you as a grease monkey. Well, that grease monkey just stripped your entire life down to the chassis." "Sterling," I said, stepping forward. I held up the flash drive. "Every bribe, every wire transfer, the video of you in the medicine cabinet. It's all over the news in 10 minutes. Your assets are frozen, your reputation is gone, and the board just voted to remove you from the company and the earth, effectively, immediately." Sterling's glass hit the floor. It didn't shatter. It just thudded against the rug. "You think you're so righteous," Sterling hissed, his face contorting with rage. "You're just like us now. You're a haze. You're built on the same secrets." "No," I said, as Detective Miller stepped forward with the handcuffs. "I'm nothing like you, because when I look in the mirror, I don't see a CEO. I see a man who knows what it's like to have nothing. And that makes me the most dangerous person you've ever met." As they led Sterling out in chains, I walked out onto the terrace. I could see the lights of the city in the distance. The war was over. 2 weeks later, the dust had finally settled. Marcus Thorne had been sentenced to 40 years without the possibility of parole. Sarah was looking at 10 for evidence tampering and attempted extortion. And Sterling Vance, he was awaiting a trial that would likely end in a life sentence for first-degree murder. I stood on the roof of the Hayes International building. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep, royal purple. I heard the door open behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. The scent of vanilla and flour followed her everywhere. "It's a long way up from the diner, isn't it?" Maya asked, stepping up to the railing beside me. I looked at her. She wasn't wearing the fancy suit today. She was back in her jeans and a simple sweater. She looked beautiful. "I think I prefer the view from the counter at Mars," I admitted. Maya laughed softly. "Well, good, because the contractor finished the renovations today. The foundation is officially open, Elias. We've already had 300 applications from local mechanics and small shop owners who were cheated by Thorne Tech. We're going to save all of them." I reached out and took her hand. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I didn't feel like I was hiding. "Maya, there's something I've been meaning to ask you." She looked at me, her eyes twinkling. "If it's about the grease trap at the diner, I already fixed it myself." I smiled. "No, it's not about the diner. It's about us." I pulled a small box from my pocket. It wasn't a diamond the size of a golf ball. It was a simple, elegant band made of polished titanium, the same material I used to use for high-performance engine valves. "When I was living in that truck, you were the only person who saw me as a human being," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You didn't love the Hayes name. You didn't love the money. You loved the guy who fixed your sink. I don't want to do this, any of this, without you." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at the ring, then back at me. "Elias Hayes," she whispered. "I don't care if you're the richest man in the world, or if we're sharing a sleeve of saltines in the rain again, as long as it's you." "The answer is yes," I slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. I looked out over the city one last time. The name Hayes was glowing in giant neon letters on the building across the street. But I knew, deep down, that the name wasn't what mattered. It was the man behind the name, the mechanic who had been broken but found a way to rebuild himself. Better, stronger, and more honest than before. I took Maya's hand, and together